There is one thing your Negro is more scared of than white supremacy. There is one thing that the Negro is more scared of than racism. There is one thing your Negro is more scared of than lynch mobs and the Ku Klux Klan. What is that one thing? That thing is called change. Why is the Negro scared of change? Because he can't control change and he can't really make things go the way he wants it to go with change. And with change, because we heard Barack Obama, he talk about change in his slogan. But as a man who has experienced change in his own life and has seen God change his own life, I can honestly tell you the thing that scares a Negro the most is change. Because, again, he can't control change, he can't control the variables of change, he can't, dictate what goes on in these intangibles. Once he gets out of his element, which is his codependent relationship with these white liberals, and he has to go out on his own, it's a different world, it's a different set of rules, and that's a scary place. Now, a lot of people would probably say that I got these ideas from David Carroll or somebody like that, but no. When I was writing ISIS here back in 1999, in one of the chapters where ISIS talks about her history, when she came to America, she comes to this observation. And she comes to this observation because she observes this Negro, interacting with white people. And she comes to the observation that, it's like these white people are gods to them. And this is an observation I also came, and then because it was an observation I came to a long time ago, back in my early 20s. And I put it into the character, and it was her observation because she's a goddess, and she says to herself, to these Negroes, these white people are like gods. And, the thing that is scariest to them is not white folks. The scariest thing to them is change. And change means, again, as I posted in the No Hope, No Change for the Negro video, change means coming out of what you knew and what you're comfortable with and going into that unknown. And the unknown is a scary place because it means there are no rules, that everything is undefined, everything is unclear, and that you truly have to take responsibility for yourself and your actions. That means every decision you make is on you. That means there's no one else to blame but you for your success or your failure. And this is something, your Negro just doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to enter that zone of interdependency and personal responsibility. What he wants to do is remain in that codependent situation with these other dysfunctional white people and, play this finger pointing, shuck and jive, blame and shame game where they continue to point fingers at each other, where he continues to point fingers at the liberal politicians, or some of your racist conservative politicians. They go back and forth. He uses his shaming tactics. They use their ethnic slurs. And then at the end of the day, he gets a few crumbs for the table, and then these people go back to business as usual. This is the definition of the codependent relationship between your Negro and, your white person in America. And this is what has been going on, after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and really, not really, with the Jim Crow. When Jim Crow was established, this is really where this relationship was established. And, because you have these racist white people who don't want to take responsibility for themselves, they're codependent. And then you have these Negroes who are codependent as well. And on both sides, they're playing this hot potato game where one makes the other the victim of the other's abuses. And it's because of this codependent relationship between these two groups that America is, caught in the middle. And this is why the country really cannot grow the way it could possibly grow. Because if we had, a functioning black community, America could grow a lot bigger and a lot faster. Our economy could be twice as strong because competition always brings out the best in people. And that's one of the things in economics you learn is that if there's a competing product, that makes the other business step up. But when you have a monopoly or an oligarchy controlling things, you're not going to have the growth. And in the black community, everything is stalled creatively and every which way because Negro does not want to come out of this codependent relationship. He doesn't even want to acknowledge the codependent relationship that he has with white people. He doesn't want to do it because that means real change. I mean, this is not that, peanut butter and jelly change that, Barack Obama promised in 2008. You see, every time we make a step like that, this is where the Negro starts to regress because he's scared of moving forward. I saw this, firsthand in 1995 with the O.J. Simpson trial. After the not guilty verdict, we had a bunch of Negroes, backpedaling to prove to their white liberal slave masters that they were good Negroes. Because I saw this with the O.J. We even had O.J. Simpson himself backpedaling and buck dancing and being a minstrel because they were scared of, moving ahead. Because the O.J. Simpson trial, the trial of the century, I call it a farce, was basically a statement, about the American justice system and how things could possibly be. But, codependent people, they get scared at every chance you see for change. Real change, they don't like. Codependent people don't like change. They just want to, they'll dance around it, they'll talk about it. But what happens with your codependent person is that they always have to hit rock bottom before they can acknowledge, that they have a problem. And I've noticed this, time and time and time again with codependent people because, this is how they operate. They have to hit that rock bottom point. And I look at black America and how far it has fallen, since the 1970s and the 1980s. And, I keep wondering where the bottom is. And I keep wondering, when is a Negro going to wake up and realize that you're going to have to change your approach to life if you ever think you want to get ahead? I mean, what you're doing now is not working. I mean, basically, when I look at a lot of black people, they're just going around and around in a circle, doing the exact same things and expecting a different result. Now, the rest of the world calls that insanity, but in the Negro world, they call that, you know, civil rights. They call that protest. They call that, and because if you look at, your Trayvon Martins, your Michael Browns, the outcomes of those cases, where are we going? I mean, you marched and protested. I mean, people all over the world marched and protested, and our black president pretty much put a rubber stamp on things that said, black lives don't matter to me. And he was afraid of change because here he is, he and his attorney general, his black attorney general, your black president and your black attorney general are so scared of change that they don't go after the people who are committing atrocities against black people. What they do is they go and they sideline with white supremacy. I don't like to. I mean, this is what they do, proving how codependent the Negro is. And what usually happens in all these cases is the Negro goes back to medicating their pain with consumer goods like your Air Jordan sneakers, like your leather jackets, like your gold chains, like your hats, starter caps, like your big screen TVs and your video games and rims and tires. This is what the Negro does. He medicates his pain because he doesn't want to take responsibility. Because for him, taking responsibility means he has to actually roll up his sleeves and go to work. And the thing that scares him more than anything is change. I think many of these same so-called bad boy thugs, same bad boy gangsters, if they were confronted with a do or die situation, many of these same shines would kill themselves. Many of your pro-black Afrocentric Negroes who want to spout how much they want to fight white supremacy, if they really were with their backs to the wall, many of these same Negroes would kill themselves because they are just so scared, or they would just back down and compromise with white supremacy. They're really not about change. They really don't want change. Again, it's like Mr. Carroll says in his videos. This is one point I can agree with him with, is that this Negro does not want solutions. Whenever you present him with anything that comes out of his box, and out of the box his white liberal slave master has put him in, what he does is he goes crazy because that means, again, somebody's presenting him with ideas that don't fit his narrative, and he cannot put himself in that victim position. The Negro loves his victim position. because he believes falsely that the victim position is a position of power. I personally know that the victim position is not a position of power, it is actually a position of weakness. It is a position where if you wind up in the position of the victim, you are not going anywhere and no one is going to respect you. This is why many people see the black man as a boy. Because I was watching an Iceman video and he talked about this, and I understand why they see you as a boy. Because you see yourself as a victim. A victim is a powerless person who cannot control their situation. And in a changed situation, people feel like that for about a couple of seconds. Then they start picking themselves up and taking responsibility because they know that even though things are changing, they have to adapt to the situation. They have to start taking responsibility for themselves and they have to start taking action if they want to move forward. Because the victim is just going to sit there in that one spot where the change is starting and stay there and then wait for somebody to pick them up. And when somebody picks you up, guess what they're going to do? They're going to ask for something in exchange for picking you up and cleaning you up, which is what your liberal does. He comes by, you ask him, he asks you, I'll pick you up, but it's going to come at a price. And the price is not just, your welfare programs or your government programs. The price is your personal intangibles of manhood. This is something, I go into my Stop Simping ebook. The new one's coming out on Memorial Day weekend. Once you lose your personal power and your intangibles, you're pretty much seen as a joke. A man who does not maintain his personal power and his intangibles is pretty much done. No one's going to respect him. Nobody's going to see him as an authority figure. No one is going to see him as strong. What they're going to see is a weak man who they can easily manipulate and use. They're going to see him as a tool. And this is what your Negro is seen as a tool to help move people ahead. Because this is what has happened, over the last 40 years. Because the Negro is so afraid of changing his own community and building his own community. Because I saw this in New York City way back as a little kid. Property was going for $5, $10, $15. I mean, entire buildings. Negro decided he wants to buy a brand new car instead of investing in his own community because he's too scared to make the efforts and to do what he has to do in order to move ahead. And this is one of the reasons why I say there is no gentrification and that the Negro screwed up on the job. Is because he was too afraid, to change his own community and build it the way he wanted it to be built. No, he waited for somebody else to do it, and then he wanted to come in and have a say in how the community was built. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You didn't put any money in, you don't get anything out. And that's the way, the world works. Not just America, but that's the way the world works. And that's the way life works. You don't put anything in, you don't get anything out. And when it comes to this Negro, he doesn't want to put anything in, but he wants to get everything out. And on top of it, he wants to have a say in things. And this is one of the most, annoying things when it comes to this Negro. He wants to come and start talking and arguing and complaining, that everybody's doing him wrong. But he puts no money on the table. He doesn't come to the table, wanting to be a part of the group, but he wants to have a say in what the group says. The group comes in. Now, there are racists who will exclude you, but when it comes down to this Negro, he won't put any of his economic resources. He got $3.3 trillion in cash and credit, and he won't use that to change his own community or change his own life. Instead, again, he medicates himself with consumer goods, thinking consumer power is economic power. But economic power is about, owning property, owning fixed tangible assets, things that build wealth. And he doesn't understand these concepts, or he really doesn't want to understand because he's too afraid of change. He's afraid of being responsible for something because as long as this liberal enabler comes to him and tells him nothing is his fault, he can come here and say, you know what, I don't have to be responsible for anything. I don't have to buy any property. I don't have to build any businesses. Nothing is my fault. It's all due to white supremacy and racism. Now, there is racism. There is white supremacy. I'm not going to deny those concepts. But what I'm going to say is, you know what, Negro, people just get tired of your excuses. They get tired of your games. And, when you deal with a codependent person, eventually you just reach to the point where you just stop dealing with them. And this is what I see with this Negro, A lot of people just get tired of dealing with you. And they just exploit this. That's why they just figure they just leave you to these predators who exploit you and take advantage of you. Because, again, you don't really want change. For all the slogans, like your Barack Obamas, most of these Negroes here in America do not want change. They want to stay in their position as victims. They want to stay, codependent on white liberal programs. They want to stay because they're getting crumbs from the table. They don't even understand that there is much, much more for them to get if they just rolled up their sleeves and did the work and learned how to make their own cakes and build their own bakeries. That's a metaphor I'm using. But if you just went out and built your own businesses and did this stuff, you would be able to hire your own people. You wouldn't have to be sitting there talking about, I'm just going to take one of these little diversity jobs or one of these little affirmative action jobs. You would be taking the time to build your own, and you could hire your own, and you could build your own community, and do the things that every other person has done. I mean, I've seen Indians come here within 10 to 15 years. They have a middle. They're up in the middle class life, and they just do that on the back of the Negro because the Negro is too scared, just too much of a coward to get up and do it for himself. He's just too afraid, to get up, and do what he needs to do. Everything is out here for him. There are just so many resources, but he's too afraid, to take that action and do what he needs to do. And when you look at this Negro and you talk about, he sits there and he, in 2008 and 2012, voted for a president that promised him change but gave him nothing and never held him accountable. That was just a microcosm of this Negro and how he acts. And because he talks a lot but he does nothing. And this is what I've seen. Last year I saw it with my own Kickstarter, and I thought black people were really serious. I even saw it at the Harlem Book Fair 4 or 5 years ago. The Negro, for all of his talk, his actions speak louder than his words. And you know I'm seeing that stuff I wrote 20 years ago, because I wrote an essay about that before I put that concept in ISIS, about, black people being more afraid of change than white people. I'm seeing this to actually be the truth. And this is just, it was an independent observation then, but I'm seeing it more as I deal with black people, as I've dealt with, black folks on Facebook, and I've dealt with black people on YouTube. This is what I'm seeing personally with black people. They are more afraid of change than they are of white people. And they're more afraid of moving forward because there are just so many unknown variables that they're going to be forced, to be responsible for themselves. As long as they can, go back over and have this codependent relationship with these white liberals and, go back and forth with these racists, everything is fine. But if they have to start going out on their own, then they get scared. And this is what, the crux of the race issue in America really is that both black people and white people are afraid of change. They're both afraid of an America where both races have to be responsible for themselves. This scares them, I say, even more than Al Qaeda and ISIS combined. A black America, where black people have to take responsibility for themselves, this scares people because both black and white. Because a lot of people don't know the variables. They're afraid of, a black economy where they would have to actually compete for resources on an international scale. They're afraid of having to compete, inside the country. But that would be a good thing because it would mean, black companies would be hiring black people. And it means that, both economies would be growing and everybody would be competing and bringing their best to the table. But, some wealthy people are codependent. Some of these racists are codependent. And they're afraid of real change. They're afraid of, moving this country forward. And that's why everything is going backwards. Because if you really look at, the sad state of America, both white and black, everybody is moving backwards. And I look at, the United States as a big picture, because I'm a real big picture visionary. Everything is going backwards. Everything is just regressing instead of progressing. And, I look at, every time black people make a step, like electing a Barack Obama, what they do is they start regressing even further. That's why we have these minstrel shows and this, continued push for minstrels, um, advanced push, as I say, with shows like Empire and Scandal, because these Negroes are too scared to take that next step. Because I saw it with the O.J. Simpson trial, and I see it right here, with the Obama election. I see this fear of the unknown. But, like the ISIS character, she was forced to when she was had her back to the wall and she was in the pit of hell, she had to, in order to get out of there, she had to face her fears. And this is something people, black people, are afraid to do. I think that they would have to actually be in that hell in order for them to finally, that rock bottom point, for them to finally start taking responsibility for themselves and face that unknown. Because there's like, when you're at that point of death and the unknown, this is something your average black person fears. And I ran into this in my own life, and I'd rather take the unknown than deal with, your basic death. This is just something that I've seen with this Negro and how afraid he is. He is afraid of change. He talks about hope and change, and this is why there is no hope and no change for this Negro, because he's afraid of change. He's afraid of moving forward. He's afraid of taking that type of action that would show people, he can stand on his own 2 feet, because he knows once you pull the crutch away and you have to start walking, you're going to have to continue moving forward. And even if, and the thing is that he's afraid of falling down, not understanding that falling down is actually a good thing, because it shows you your mistakes and it shows you, what you're doing wrong, so that you can get back up again and continue to keep moving forward. This is something, is basic part of life, but this Negro, again, his growth, he holds back his own growth, and then you have this white liberal enabler right behind him, continuing to hold back his growth. He could have been a long way. He could have been a long way on his own, but it's his own fear that keeps him from moving forward. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.